Freezing weather can be super hard on mosquito systems. So don't let old man winter bring you down when you start up your system next spring. In this video, we're going to walk through the steps to prepare a MistAway Gen 3 tankless system for the winter. But first, here's why you should do it at the end of every mosquito season. The MistAway Gen 3 has three subsystems where fluids are trapped inside components. Fresh water is trapped between the unit and faucet, and also in the inlet solenoid valve, flow meter, and flow regulator. Concentrate is trapped in the coupler, the dosing pump, and tubing into the dosing pump. And dilute chemical is trapped in the pressure gauge, pump, agitation valve, zone kit, and nozzle circuit filter, if you have them. When water freezes, and the dilute misting chemical is mostly water, it expands to occupy about 9% more volume as ice than it does as a liquid. When it freezes, this expansion inside the Gen 3 components exert tremendous pressure, enough to seriously damage or break them. Winterizing a Gen 3 should only take about 30 minutes, so it's definitely an investment that will pay off when you can be confident of starting the unit up next spring without problems. Generally, the process involves first flushing chemical out of all the unit's components and nozzle circuit with fresh water, and then evacuating the water. In step 1, we'll flush the coupler, dosing pump, and concentrate flow lines first with clean water and then with air. You'll need a tip and measure bottle filled with clean water. Thread the plus cap onto the bottle and insert into the coupler. In the controller, go through the refill routine and change the mix ratio in the controller to 50. Then go to the maintenance menu and run a manual charge. A mix ratio of 50 will cause the dosing pump to run for about 3 minutes, which is long enough to displace the concentrate in the coupler, lines, and dosing pump with fresh water. You can watch the progress in flushing the pump by removing the controller and watching the fluid in the clear tubing on the discharge side of the pump. After the charge is completed, remove the plus cap from the bottle and snap it by itself into the coupler. Now go through the refill routine, this time setting the mix ratio back to its default of 108. Then execute another charge to displace the water you just introduced with air. As before, you should watch the progress of this. In step 2, you'll drain the dilute chemical from the batch tank. First, remove a nozzle from anywhere on the circuit and replace it with a length of 1/4-inch tubing so that the stream will empty into a 5-gallon bucket. Go to the maintenance menu and execute the drain routine to drain the batch tank of dilute chemical. When you hear the batch tank empty, lift the right corner of the unit to evacuate as much of the dilute chemical as possible. Press the stop button to end the drain routine, and replace the nozzle you've removed. You'll need to dispose of the bucket contents per label instructions and local regulations. In step 3, you'll flush the pump, batch tank, agitation valve, and nozzle circuit with fresh water. First, in the setup menu, configure a 120-second manual Winterization. Then run a manual mist. Since you are starting with an empty batch tank, it will take a minute or two to fill before the misting starts. If you have a zone kit, run another 120-second manual mist through zone 2 to flush it. When the manual mist is complete, we need to drain the fresh water from the batch tank. To speed up this step, remove a nozzle from the circuit. You won't need to capture the stream since you're misting fresh water. Start an inspect routine in the maintenance menu. After it starts, turn off the faucet feeding the unit and disconnect the water supply tubing at the filter inlet. When you hear the batch tank empty again, lift the right front corner of the unit to evacuate as much water as you can. Then allow the unit to run dry for 15 or 20 seconds and then press stop. Don't forget to replace the nozzle you've removed. In step 4, we'll evacuate the fresh water from the flow meter, flow regulator, and inlet solenoid valve. Disconnect the tubing feeding the filter or nozzle circuit from the unit. In the maintenance menu, use the Winterization function to hold the inlet supply and agitation valves open for 30 seconds. While the valves are open, lift the left side of the unit about 4 inches to let water run out of the ports on the right side of the unit. In step 5, we'll open up the unit and clear the water from the pressure gauge, and clean the batch tank, float switch, and intake filter. And if you've got a zone kit, we'll clear that with an air compressor. To access the components, you'll need to move the plastic shroud out of the way. Remove screws securing the shroud and controller, then lift the shroud up, feeding the controller through the well. Rotate the shroud counterclockwise and rest it on the left side wall of the unit. Disconnect the tubing to the pressure gauge and let water drain from it, then reconnect the tubing. For this next step, you'll need some paper towels and an all-purpose spray cleaner. You might also want some rubber gloves. Remove the lid from the batch tank and wipe the tank out with some paper towels. Remove the pump intake filter, clean it, and replace it. Leaving the float switch in place, clean the float and post thoroughly with the cleaner. Then confirm the float travels easily on the post. The best time to clear fluid from a zone kit is while you have access to the float. You'll need this adapter to connect the air compressor line to 1/4-inch tubing. Disconnect all tubing from the zone kit and insert a short length of tubing connected to the compressor adapter into the port marked in. When you connect the adapter to the compressor line, the air will clear the part of the valve that feeds zone 1. Leave the tubing and adapter in the in port. To open zone 2, you'll activate an inspection cycle for zone 2. But for that to happen, the float needs to be in the up position. So while you lift the float with your finger, start an inspection for zone 2 in the maintenance menu. When the cycle starts, you can release the float, connect the adapter to the compressor, and clear zone 2. Return the batch tank, lid, shroud, and controller into position. In step 6, we'll clear water from the nozzle circuit filter. Disconnect the pressure relief valve and invert it to clear the water. Unscrew the filter head from the housing and pour out water remaining in the housing. You can either replace the filter element now or do it on spring startup. Put the filter head back on the housing. Step 7 is to unplug the unit and coil the power cord. And step 8 is to purge any remaining water from the nozzle circuit with compressed air. Remove the tip from the last nozzle on each run. Insert the nozzle circuit tubing into the adapter, then connect it to the compressor line and thoroughly blow out the nozzle circuit. That's it. At 30 minutes or so, we think winterizing your Gen 3 is a pretty inexpensive way to ensure that your spring startup doesn't turn into a train wreck, even if you get that rare freeze. You can find a checklist of the steps in the Tech Self-Help section of MistAwayPro.com. Just search on Winterization. Thanks for watching.